So I'd just like to start by letting you guys introduce yourself. Tell me who you are, what you do, and why we should trust your opinion. To lock us in.
Yeah, my name is Onali Malu. I'm the director for Computer Learning Center based at Museum Hill Center. We are a 25-year-old company, and I've been in the IT industry for 42 years. So I know it all from analog to digital. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Karanja. I work for Naivas Supermarkets, the largest retailer even by footprint in Kenya. I head the innovations and data analytics team, which really the focus is to improve your customer experience and maybe differentiate our offering to you as a customer. I'm probably not a vendor. I think I'm one of the customers who would speak on why we're being locked in. But yes, pleasure to be here.
Hey, is Warren on? My people? He's not there? Okay. Is Duncan here? All right, I'll just proceed. So, Malu, you work a lot with, practically any vendor, who's anyone. And so I'm curious, when you're bringing on board people for training and you're talking to them about vendors, what are some of the things you help them to negotiate with their contracts that will help them prevent vendor lock-ins? Let me just move closer.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. As we all know, that as far as cloud is concerned, we don't have many vendors, right? We all know the four leading vendors, which is AWS, Microsoft, Oracle, and I think the last one is Alibaba Cloud. Anybody using Alibaba Cloud here? I don't think so. So that leaves us with three vendors. And when you look at the vendors, they offer different kind of facilities in terms of going to the cloud. So what we need to do is to make sure that the company gets the best out of the cloud implementation. And as a training center, we are also a learning partner for AWS Cloud, Oracle, and Microsoft. So we see different technologies from the different vendors. But going forward, I think what is important is to have a multi-cloud approach. And in terms of whatever you do, is to make sure that everything is portable. Because where you don't want to be in a situation is you are locked. And for whatever particular reason, if you need to migrate or move from one cloud provider to another, what is important? I think the main is your data. So your data needs to be interoperable so that the data which you have can be moved from one cloud vendor to another cloud vendor without being locked. And the second thing is to make sure that you take backups so that your backups can be used in case you decide to migrate from one vendor to the other. And the other thing is to make sure that whatever you are developing on the cloud, right, is open in terms of your APIs, in terms of the standards, so that if you do have a contract and for whatever reason you need to move from one cloud provider to the other, it becomes much easier. Thank you.
So Alex, you must work with several hundred vendors. How do you make sure that you don't get tied down to one particular cloud provider? Because you must negotiate and come up with a strategy. You know who gets to do what is the extent of the impact. How do you get to choose? How do you know that your strategy is working?
I think yes, as Malu has mentioned, there are only so few vendors that are in the market at this scale, where you're looking at maybe your enterprise solutions, and every vendor will come and tell you, we are the best at this, and we probably do this. I think mostly is to look at, where do you want to go, and look at what is your scalability, even with the enterprise systems that you're using. To be able to analyze and say, okay, yes, this particular vendor provides what I want, not just today, but within even their roadmap, you're able to see an alignment for both, but something that benefits both of you. And I think even the jumping from one vendor to another, I think is simpler, very simpler said than done. Because again, it affects your downtime, your operational, and even just the change management. Because what most of these vendors don't tell you is that it's not just the users who will suffer the change, but even your system administrators have a very big change. I think managing even the current cloud particular offerings takes quite a bit of skill sets. So I think mostly in your strategy is to see how far are we aligned in what I want to do in the next maybe 3 or 4 years versus what the vendor is saying, this is our roadmap for where they want to go.
So have you found that there are instances where you, yes? Oh, yay, Warren, hi. How are you? Good to see you. So I'll actually just ask you the same thing that I asked these guys. First, please introduce yourself. And second, how do you come up with a good strategy that allows you to work with multiple cloud vendors without feeling like you're locked in or like your hands are tied and you can't make decisions, you can't innovate, and you're basically left hanging?
Thank you very much, Carol. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I am Warren Hero. I am currently the Chief Information Officer as well as the Chief Digital Officer for Weber Wenzel, a large African law firm. How do you do that? So first of all, this ability to think about the synthesis of your strategy. What is important to your clients? What is important to your organization? What is important for the people that work for the organization? And that ability to understand what your client needs are and the value propositions that link to those, we then translate it to the aspects that are important in our platforms. And then once we understand the benefits dependency based on that relationship to what our clients need and what our employees need, then we start to think about how to manage our vendors. In my team, I've appointed a vendor manager, and so all she does is manage the commercials as well as the service level agreements, but not on a point basis. I think you have to make sure with all of your vendors, while they might be separate entities, if there are multiple vendors participating in the delivery of one capability, they need to understand how they contribute to that. And of course, as an internal team, you need to have the foresight to make sure that you orchestrate these different capabilities to produce the outcomes that the organization requires.
So what happens in the instances where you actually have to migrate from one provider to another? How do you handle that? Do you negotiate? Yes. How do you do that?
Yes. So absolutely. So I work for a firm of lawyers. So we always start a relationship like a marriage with what is going to divorce, what's the divorce going to look like. And so that ability to understand, for instance, with your cloud vendors, what are my ingress costs, first of all, but what are my egress costs? First of all, you have to understand what part of the solution is proprietary, right? If there's specific proprietary software that is being used and you link a database to that, you need to be able to understand what are the alternative capabilities in terms of software that you can use for that. And then fundamentally, this ability to understand what is the basis for performance and then to make sure that you manage that basis of performance as often as necessary in order to make sure that you understand when non-performance starts to occur, but then make sure that it is never an adversarial point of view, that you understand who your strategic partners are, then make sure that you then give them an opportunity to redress. So it's all about how you construct a contract, how you construct the elements of non-performance and performance, but fundamentally always understanding in terms of a market where your opportunities are to substitute services. The thing that we always want to do as technologists is to reduce the number of single points of failure, and you have to go through a systematic process of identifying those single points of failure and then making sure that you go after getting rid of those single points of failure.
Well, talking about single points of failure, one of the issues with having many different vendors is that it's not necessarily as secure as you would like it to be. So Alex, how do you tend to well, kind of huddle over all of these vendors and make sure that it's all safe?
I think thankfully the standards that these vendors operate on are becoming more and more global standards. So comparing one to the other usually has at least a good benchmark and metrics for the same. And you're able to at least have a point of comparison. I think we all look at that magic quadrant and you have things to look at and compare. But even so internally, I think it's quite a challenge to be able to manage how these vendors interact, and especially from an interoperability place, because even as the business is dynamic, the customer is always demanding more, and you have people who come up and say, I have a particular service that I think your customers would like, and you're very willing to put it in place, but how it interacts with the current architecture you have with the 2 or 3 vendors, that's, I think, at the point where you actually really realize you are locked in one place or the other. So it may not necessarily be about cost, but at the point where you say, we are stable, we are secure, we are running, but now I want to adapt and improve experience, then you realize, oh, wow, it takes a bit more effort to get these vendors to do what you want.
So from what I'm understanding, vendor locking is basically an inevitability. You should not think of it as a problem. You should just find ways to mitigate it.
I think truly so, vendor locking is inevitable, especially from an enterprise sort of perspective. And I think mostly we also focus as cloud here, where we're saying we're hosting our servers in the big boys, but also looking at software as a service. There are times I think even experience teaches us quite a lot, painfully so, but quite a lot. And one of the biggest advantages or selling points of doing cloud applications or software as a service is the quick turnaround. So my business can come and say, we have this particular idea, there's this use case, you do your research, ticks all the boxes, it's very high on the quadrant, the reputation is good, and we put in that service, and miraculously within a month we are running. But as business you find, less than a year down the line, the business dynamic totally changed, the business process changed, and now you have to go back to the vendor and say, by the way, we need to adapt this for this. And then that's when you realize, when we're being onboarded, they were very eager, because they're telling us, commit for 3 years, you cut costs by this much, you give your management that budget, and they're like, actually, this is a good idea. But coming back, you're like, okay, now I have assets I can't use for the next 1.5 years because my business process changed, and because the software as a service operates at volume, then it's affecting too many people for them to actually do the change for me.
Wow, Malu, you work with so many people who you train, in terms of tech. How do you help them figure out that when they come up with a strategy or with a plan, they're supposed to be able to make sure that there's interoperability? Otherwise, it doesn't work. And if you can't prevent vendor lock-in, then this is what your option really is.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Good question. Now, the underlying architecture for most of the vendors is different. Let's be honest and open. The architecture from the vendors is very different. What we need to do is to make sure that when we are discussing on training, you find some aspects are the same, but there are certain aspects which are very tied up to that vendor. So we need to understand if there is interoperability in certain aspects of the applications which you are running, or the service which you are running, or the storage, or the compute. So it is not that easy to migrate from one vendor to the other, but if you ensure that you take steps so that when you start the cloud journey, right from the beginning, you are very sure that in case you need to move from one vendor to the other, your systems are developed, your application has been developed, so that in case you need to move, there is very little change which is required.
Most of we have customers that cut across we have customers from the European Union, so comes in the element of the GDPR compliance and all that. So this is part of the package that as a customer, what are some of the compliance requirements that you need to comply with as far as you move to the cloud? And then for us also before, you bring you in also to give you the comfort that, see, our platform has a number of certifications from security point of view that all the leading security, certified body certify the cloud and give the comfort that yes, you can be able to have your data on a platform and all that. And the other day, just recently, remember, Oracle also announced the partnership with Microsoft. The ability you can run your stuff on Azure, then you still want your database to run on OCI. The possibility to be able to have that connection without having to move entirely from your Azure environment to our environment. And these are kind of discussions that technology is really pushing for providers like Oracle to be able to give comfort to the customer that yes, look, you don't need to also, you invested in these other technologies, so you don't need to lose that investment, but still you can be able to also work with you in that journey.
So will we be seeing more of this kind of partnerships in future?
I think yes, where the market, because all these development are driven, I can say customer driven, because almost every day there's just the customer demand changing the business environment. A lot of staff are changing compliance. So with all this change, happening, a lot of those I'm seeing in the near future, a lot of that will be taking place.
Okay, I'm going to turn to you guys. Does anybody have any questions? You must have questions. I'm pretty sure you've had struggles with your vendors. Anyone have a question? You can approach the mic. Looking around. Okay. Warren, are you still there? So if someone is coming to you and they want to get out of a vendor contract and you're a lawyer, what do you usually advise them to do?
So remember, if you're going to step out of a contract, you have to first of all appreciate what the performance criteria were and how the vendor has performed in relation to those performance criteria. One of the things, and I think one of the colleagues of the panel mentioned it, this issue about the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Gartner also has a service by which you can benchmark your different vendors, and also has a service that enables you to negotiate with your vendors, especially the large hyperscale cloud providers. So I would say to you, one of the fundamental things is always to appreciate as you start and you write the contract to be appreciative of those performance criteria, and to literally on a monthly basis take stock, a simple red, amber, green indicator for the several different services, including our satisfaction with a broad service delivery. And then the important thing is to have candid discussions with your vendor and to also indicate your intent, and then once you've indicated that, to make sure you have the supporting information, and then because most organizations tend to have a general counsel, and if you don't have a general counsel, I would say have a fairly candid conversation with your vendor, express your intent, and then exercise your intent in the context of the contractual agreements, Carol.
How hands-on were you, Alex, when you were negotiating with your vendors? Did you bring in a lawyer? Did you, give them a list of to do, to never do, and if you ever do this, we divorce?
I don't think you have that much negotiating power when you're dealing with these people, especially this big guy. Because really, the services you're buying from them, you're buying their reputation. You're buying the fact that if it's Azure or Oracle or AWS, that they've been around for a while, and these are the services they provide. And globally, even in that Magic Quadrant, there's a lot of user satisfaction. So I think even in that user agreement, I don't think if I could narrow down to 2 lines and say, can you change this for Naivas? I don't think that would happen.
No way.
I don't think that would happen. But I think even as we focus on hosting in terms of moving your services to the cloud from an Azure or AWS perspective, even from an enterprise perspective, where I'm saying I'm leaning on a particular software or a particular application, even then, that negotiation to actually have change within that agreement is very difficult to achieve. I think there it's a bit more, you can have your way, but it's very difficult to achieve, especially because they're looking at it at a global level and a volume-based level.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay, I'll just let you guys have 1 minute to round up. But basically, I have 2 minutes to go, so maybe 30 seconds. I'll start with you, Duncan.
Yeah, closing remarks, but just to ride on what he just said, the kind of, the value we give you, or most of the big guys, you don't need, you don't have the stress of going to, look at that contract again, does it? Because it has gone through a number of tests in terms of global. If you have a global presence, your company have, other countries, already that has been done for you, so you can take it to the bank. You go to sleep, I'm well covered. So I don't need, today I'm at Oracle B, but these are standard principles. So for our customers, you can take it to the bank. You don't need to worry about, the GDPR. That contract, it is, holistic, takes care of, because our value, we look at our customer first. For us, it's the customer first. So that one, you should not worry at any given point. So in my closing remarks, cloud is a journey. And we have an option, the way the trend, because you're in banking, in insurance, whatever industry, customer demands are changing. So you need to be, rework on your go-to-market strategy. And what helps you to be able to do that? Cloud. You don't need to go worry about, tomorrow my disk will be full. That is that element of scalability. So you can go to sleep. You can even go for a holiday knowing that your customers will be, that service. You'll be able to get it when they need it. Thank you very much.
Alex, do you feel that safe? Both Duncan as you said.
Yes, I think to a certain extent, very much so. And it is primarily the reason why you would go cloud. To have that satisfaction that, yes, I can sleep and know that server was backed up or that server was, patched, and I don't necessarily need to worry about that. So as much as that is concerned, yes.
Okay.
I think the point, maybe as my parting shot, is say once you go cloud, you also lose a lot of ad hoc control of your own servers, because at this point you're using shared services. So you also lose a lot of quick adoption of innovation that you would want to put in place for your business, because then you have to work by their rules. For you to do this, you have to do that. And it makes sense because then you're affecting many people. But then, as the speakers before me said, I don't think cloud adoption is for everyone, or not necessarily everyone, but for every system. Yeah.
Malu?
I think let's be honest, cloud is real. It is there. I think with the internet bandwidth which we have in Kenya, there will be more cloud adoption. What we find that many people adopt cloud and then they come for training, right? It should be the other way around. That you should actually train, and a lot of training is also available free. So you have two types of training. We have vendor-neutral training, which talks about concepts of cloud, right? Private cloud, public cloud, storage, compute, and so on. So it gives you an idea of what cloud is. So this is basic, which is vendor-neutral. And then if you're going for a big project, you could do a course on AWS, get the basics of AWS. You could do a basics of Microsoft Azure. And you could do a basic of Oracle. So that when you go through the cloud journey, you have enough idea on how different systems work before you decide to select the right vendor on the cloud journey.
Warren, take us home. What are your last remarks?
Yeah, my last remarks is there are platforms that do multi-cloud management. So from a strategic perspective, decide if you are a single cloud vendor or if you are multi-cloud. I would suggest multi-cloud, because with these management layers, you can move workload between one cloud and the next cloud. And then apply good management principles, right? Review contracts, review performance, and penalize where there is non-performance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you should write a book on how to negotiate your contract with a cloud provider. We would all love to read it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give my very wonderful panelists a round of applause. And thank you so much.